Hi, my name is Jim and I was retired. After my last I-bond video last week, a viewer suggested that my wife and I could gift I-bonds to each other to be presented in future years. Wow, that would be a surprise gift. Could we really lock into more of this interest rate in future years? Stay tuned to this video and I will discuss a gift of 9.62% interest on I-bonds. It looks like I was completely underestimating what inflation would do. If you recall in my last video, I suggested that the inflation factor would result in a rate for I-bonds starting on May 1st, a maximum of 8.5%. That was my high estimate. Well, it turns out it's going to be 9.62%. It's amazing, high inflation. Now, I remember the Carter era double-digit inflation. So the current 8.5% inflation rate from the CPI-U is not historic high, but it is the highest it's ever been for the I-bond history. The I-bond was introduced in 1998 as a way of protecting your savings against inflation. The I stands for inflation. And it pays a fixed rate for the life of the 30-year bond, depending upon when you purchase it, and then a variable inflation factor that's factored in every 6 months. Let's explain that. Hey, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. The more subscriptions that I get, the higher it'll be up in the search results. I-bonds stands for inflation, and it's a way of protecting your savings against inflation. It's a 30-year savings bond that includes a fixed rate that stays the same for the 30 years of your bond, and a variable inflation rate that changes every 6 months based on the latest reading of the CPI-U. The Consumer Price Index for urban workers. And as you know, April 12th, the new reading came out. It was a pretty high 8.5% annual rate of inflation, but more importantly, the index number change was 4.81% from September to March. And that sets the new savings bond inflation adjuster for your I-bonds. I used these two tables that I found on treasurydirect.gov, which had the historic fixed rates, the historic inflation adjustment factors, to create this last column in this table in numbers of an initial composite rate for an I-bond. So I took those numbers from treasurydirect.gov and plugged them into a numbers table. I had to reverse the order of them to get the chart to appear right, but I used those two columns that then calculate the initial composite rate for I-bonds over time. And I used the same formula that they use. And I'll go over that formula one more time. I shared it in my December I-bonds video, but here it is again. The actual formula is the composite rate equals the fixed rate plus 2 times the semi-annual inflation rate plus the fixed rate times the semi-annual inflation rate. A real simple government formula. Here's how it works. So for bonds bought this month, the composite rate is 0 plus 2 times 3.56% inflation factor announced last November 1st, plus 0 times that inflation factor, and that gives you 7.12%. That's the composite rate through the end of April 2022. If the fixed rate remains 0, as most analysts say that it will, the new rate starting May 1st will be 0 plus 2 times 4.81% plus 0 times 4.81% for 9.62%. Now, note that the Treasury Department runs this formula so it will never fall below zero, even if the inflation rate dips below zero. That's called deflation. But if that happens, you're protected. It'll never be below zero. And this 9.62%, as you can see on this line chart here, is the historic high. The formula never results in less than zero, but it can be zero, as it was in May 2009 and May 2015 in this chart. It's also important to note that this chart only shows the initial composite rate. It changes for each individual bond every 6 months based on when you bought the bond. The next line chart that I'm going to show you is the fixed rate over time. And as you can see, in the first 2.5 years, the fixed rate was over 3%. But the fixed rate has been less than 1 since 2007, and it's been 0 for the last 2 years. When I bought my first I-bond in April 2003, the fixed rate was 1.6%, and the variable inflation rate was 1.23%. And it worked out as a initial composite rate of 4.08%. Now that same bond, I currently earn 8.78% because of the high fixed rate in the bond, and I will earn 11.22% for 6 months starting on October 1st, when that bond gets its new rate to be announced on May 1st. Now the third line that I've charted here from the numbers from treasurydirect.gov is the variable inflation rates, the semi-annual inflation rates that they use to adjust all I-bonds. As I mentioned, the composite rate can never be below zero, but the inflation factor can in times of deflation. This 4.81% inflation factor is the highest it's ever been, and that's why it's going to result in the highest initial composite rate of 9.62% in the life of the Series I savings bond. As you know from my last video, my wife and I have already purchased our allotment of 2022 I-bonds. Each taxpayer is allowed to buy up to $10,000 in I-bonds. And we elected to do ours in April so that we can get the 7.12%, followed by whatever rate was announced on May. And we're looking pretty good right now. But one viewer suggested that we could gift each other I-bonds to be presented in future years. Could this work to grab hold of this historically high interest rate? Let's explore that. Here's what Treasury Direct says about gift bonds. Although you are limited to $10,000 per tax ID, you can give gifts above that don't count towards your purchase of bonds for your name. So although both of us have maxed out at $10,000, we could give gifts to others. But the recipient can only accept the gift if they have not already purchased their limit. But you can leave the gift in the gift box until they are ready to receive it. While the gift must sit in a gift box for at least 5 days to make sure checks clear with Treasury Direct, there's no maximum on how long you leave it in that gift box. So we could buy each other gifts now, then transfer the gift to the recipient's Treasury Direct account and say early 2023. A shout out to Harry Sitt of the Finance Buff blog post for explaining this approach. I will put a link to his article from last December on this gifting of I-bonds idea. Now, his article notes that as soon as you purchase the gift bond sitting in the gift box still earns interest, and it still counts down the holding period. When you buy an I-bond, you cannot redeem it for the first 12 months. But if I buy a gift in April and let it sit in the gift box and then present it in January, my recipient will only have to wait another 3 months till next April to be out of that 12-month holding period. Meanwhile, the bond has been earning interest. Now keep in mind that I-bonds are 30-year bonds. They will earn interest for 30 years with this formula. You can't touch them for the first year, and if you redeem them before the 5th year, that is in years 1 through 4, you will be subject to a penalty of 3 months, the most recent 3 months interest. That's not going to be much, but it is a penalty. Or the recipient of the gift could decide to keep it for 5 years and redeem it after 5 years penalty free. So after all this research, I'm considering buying a $5,000 gift for Marie and then presenting it to her in early 2023. I hope she's going to reciprocate. But allowing only $5,000 allows us the flexibility to present that gift in 2023 and still buy an additional $5,000 in 2023 if rates change. If not, we've secured at least $10,000 worth of record-breaking inflation protection with this return. If you wait until May, your first 6 months will receive a whopping 9.62%. But unless the rate announced in November 2022 surpasses the current rate of 7.12%, which is highly unlikely, it's still better buying in April. If you buy in April, you'll earn the 7.12% for the first 6 months and then 9.62% for the second 6 months. And that'll average out to more than an 8.5% total return on your savings. So that's why I'm considering buying a gift of $5,000 for Marie this month. That'll allow it to earn interest and count down its countdown clock in the gift box. And then I will present that gift in 2023. That'll allow her another $5,000 of I-bonds to be purchased in 2023 if rates do turn out to be more promising than I think. Otherwise, we will have invested another $10,000 total between the two of us. I hope she reciprocates to me too. But we'll have another $10,000 earning this historic return. So I'm going to conclude with my standard warning. I am not a professional. I have no initials after my name. So take these as entertaining ideas from one educated consumer to another. Always do your own due diligence and seek out a professional if you need one. Hey, and go to my Google Sites. I will upload this latest spreadsheet of historic I-bond rates on that site. Thanks.